Along the way, some of the lads were getting discouraged and quitting and complaining and whatnot along the way. And I remember very clearly telling people, hey, hang in there. You're going to be real proud of this. We're making a classic. And I used those words. I said classic.
He knows as much about cinematography as the cinematographer. He knows as much about art direction as the art director.
Terry is a brilliant man, just a brilliant man and a kind and wonderful man, and it was heaven working with him.
There are great films about killers, and then there's Badlands, a movie that doesn't just depict violence but redefines how we understand it. Terrence Malick's 1973 debut takes a story ripped from true crime headlines and turns it into something far more haunting, poetic, and unforgettable. In this video, we're diving into why Badlands isn't just an important crime film, it might be the greatest crime film ever made. From Malick's fairy tale-like storytelling to the mythic and beautiful world building of the film, it's a film that refuses to fit in the true crime genre and instead makes its own. Part outlaw road movie, part psychological character study, and part fairy tale-like crime film that transforms a violent true story into a haunting and poetic piece of American filmmaking. The movie has gone down in history as one of the greatest debut movies of all time, and today we are going to look at it and analyze it, here on ETS. And before I get into this video, please like the video, it really helps the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe. Okay, let's do this. The story of Badlands follows a young couple who go on a violent journey through the American Midwest. The story is loosely based on the real-life case of Charles Starkweather and Carol Ann Fugate, who went on a 9-day rampage killing 10 people. They are depicted in the film as Kit Carruthers, played by Martin Sheen, and Holly Sargis, played by Sissy Spacek. Some people, when hearing that description, give off very similar comparisons to the film Bonnie and Clyde, which is also based on a true event. When I was researching for this video, I found out that Malick was a student of Arthur Penn, who directed Bonnie and Clyde, so I don't think it's a small coincidence that his first movie would involve a similar style to Bonnie and Clyde. But despite the similar nature of these two films, they are very different when it comes to story, structure, and characters. To me, movies about serial killers are not easy to make because you can easily go into exploitation territory and reduce real-life tragedies to consumable thrills. Because the crimes depicted are rooted in reality, filmmakers must navigate a narrow line, diving into the psyche behind such figures without turning cruelty into voyeurism or turning killers into icons. Crossing that line often results in exploitation, where the film profits from horror rather than offering insight into why the killer did what they did. What I love about Badlands is that the violence depicted in the film is never a big spectacle. Instead, the film can be considered a critique of violence in movies itself. The main character of Kit models himself after pop cultural images of masculinity, especially James Dean. His gestures, clothes, and attitude feels borrowed rather than authentic. What this suggests is that Kit's violence is not driven by deep ideology or passion, but by a shallow desire to perform a role that only lives in a fantasy. After Kit murders Holly's father and sets her house on fire, they go off the grid and build a sort of dreamlike fort that they try to make a living in. They even build many traps and makeshift hideouts just like an action hero would do. But during this time, they constantly find themselves having trouble with either catching food or just being bored with virtually nothing to really do in this setting. This shows that Kit tries really hard to be like a typical action hero, having his own fort, setting up traps, having the girl of his dreams, but it only exists in an outlaw fantasy world, and in reality it's just a hollow and empty experience. To me, what Malick suggests is that American culture's celebration of rebels and anti-heroes actively contributes to the emergence of figures like Kit. However, Holly is not a very innocent person herself. We hear her narration throughout the entire movie, and she talks about Kit as if he was this James Dean fantasy outlaw man of her dreams. Even though she appears innocent on the outside and never commits any violent acts, she doesn't really seem to grasp the seriousness of what is happening around her, and she describes murders and traumatic events with the same tone she uses for typical mundane observations. She's not particularly cruel, but she lacks moral awareness.
It was very clear from Terry's script that these kids, both Kit and Holly, had an image of themselves that was way out of the realm of reality.
An interesting thing I discovered when doing research for this video is that in a rare 1973 interview from Malick, he wanted the movie to be set up like a fairy tale, outside time. And once you watch the movie, it's very easy to see why he would say this. Holly's narration feels like she is telling a story from a young, innocent mind, kind of like how a kid would read a fairy tale. Come to think of it, Holly acts a lot like a Snow White or a Gretel type character, and Kit feels a lot like the prince trying to get the girl. And even though the movie takes place in 1959, the movie never makes a big deal about where the time period is set. And this is what Malick meant by outside time, and this adds a timeless quality, as what this suggests is that this can happen to anyone at any time. What this fairy tale structure does is that it makes the audience aware of how stories smooth over brutality, turning real harm into something strangely beautiful or instructive. And also, the cinematography in this film reflects this fairy tale notion as well. The shots are gorgeous in their composition and gives the landscapes a storybook quality. This is something that Malick would do throughout his entire filmography, using natural light for the majority of the film. The natural light gives the movie a realistic yet somewhat mystical vibe to the whole picture, as they shot most of the scenes in golden hour, which is a period of time in the day where the sun is either rising or setting, which gives a golden look to the film. In this movie, the environment is used to complement Holly and Kit's off-grid nature, to show that these characters don't try to be a part of the status quo, but at the same time their nature is also rooted in tradition as well. Throughout the movie, the pair constantly pick up garbage and little things to keep with them for their trip. Even though they want to appear as if they are this off-grid couple, they still can't let go of this consumerist nature that they have been a part of for their entire life. An interesting thing about this film is how they shoot violence. Malick never has the violence feel flashy like Bonnie and Clyde. The murders are often shot plainly, from a distance, without close-ups or dramatic emphasis, which is something that most modern-day shows and movies have trouble doing. Let's compare this to any scene in the Ryan Murphy Monster trilogy. Everything that I said about why serial killer movies and shows are hard to make can be summed up in these 3 shows. The shows feel more like they want to just explore the life of these certain killers without any real clear examination as to why they are doing the acts they commit. The violence is always front and center, usually shot in slow motion and feels so overly dramatic, the exact opposite of Badlands. But I think the worst part about this is that they are showing the deaths of real people as if they are victims in a horror movie. There's no deep message or any attempt at trying to make an examination of a character. It's all just shock value. That you cannot say about Badlands. Even though Badlands is based on a real crime with the characters' names changed from the real perpetrators, everything I said about the movie so far has been a deep dive into either the character's psyche or how the movie was masterfully shot, something you cannot say about the Monster trilogy. Badlands is a movie that takes aim at violence in the media, and at times it even states what's the point of even committing violent acts in the first place. When Kit gets captured by law enforcement and the officers ask why he did what he did, he gives a really vague and not really clear answer.
Kid, I got a question for you. You like people?
They're okay.
Then why'd you do it?
I don't know. I always wanted to be a criminal, I guess, just not this big one.
And at the end of the movie, when Kit is handing all of these possessions off to the officers, he's treating them like they are sacred artifacts, almost like he did this only for fame. I mean, right before he is captured, he makes this little makeshift monument out of rocks and makes a statement that this is the place where they caught him, almost as if he wants a real monument to be made in that exact place. And the worst part is that he brought Holly along this journey, and she has to live with the fact that she was part of Kit's crime spree for the rest of her life, even though the ending for her does seem very fairy tale-esque, where she gets off on probation and marries the son of the lawyer who defended her. Kit got sentenced to death and was executed only months after his sentencing. The real case did involve Starkweather getting sentenced to death, but Carol Fugate got sentenced to life in prison, but eventually got paroled in 1976, 3 years after the movie came out. The real case of Starkweather and Fugate is far more disturbing than the movie itself, and involved a lot of things I cannot talk about on YouTube, but that just shows that Malick is more about wanting to craft a masterful story and deep meaning behind this film, rather than making it for shock value and just recreating the real events. Terrence Malick eventually went on to have an amazing career directing movies like Days of Heaven, The Thin Red Line, and Tree of Life, but his sparks of genius and intellect will always be immortalized in his first film, Badlands.